Okay. Has anyone generally struggled in school with any topic and subject? Okay. So, a little about my background and my personal journey with dyslexia. Preschool and kindergarten were pretty normal, but I was not able to read like the other kids. And it wasn't super concerning because it was kindergarten and a lot of the kids could not read at this point. First grade, my first grade teacher called my mom one afternoon and just said she just wasn't getting it. Again, concerned, but not too concerned. After all, it was only first grade. Second and third grade I had two amazing teachers, and they did everything they possibly could to accommodate everything for me, and that's when I began seeing a tutor. Fourth grade is where I hit rock bottom. I had a very young teacher, and she was not the best. Just think about the most horrible thing that could happen to you as a dyslexic student, and that was my day every single life. Finally, I was tested by a psychologist and was determined that I had dyslexia. I attended Camperdown from 5th to 8th grade, and it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Then I came to Southside from 9th to 12th grade. So, by definition, a learning disability is something that affects the brain's ability to send and receive and process information. A psychologist can diagnose a learning disability, but a team is usually involved first with the diagnosis. Before the diagnosis is made, there's usually a very distinct sign that something is going on. If you don't have any learning issues, consider yourself very fortunate. Today, I'm going to put you in my shoes, and I'm going to see if you could learn like how someone with a learning disability does. Okay. What we will cover: types of learning disabilities, the simulation, accommodations, and my biblical application. Okay. So would anyone like to try to read the first highlighted lines? Noah.
Dyslexia, also known as a reading disorder, is characterized by trouble with reading despite normal intelligence.
You want to keep going?
Problems may include difficulties in spelling words, reading quickly, writing words, sounding out words in the head, pronouncing words when reading.
Okay. That was good. Okay. So now we are going to, this is obviously the normal way. And that's how a typical student may read a passage, that it scrambles up the words and the letters. And so this is the normal way. And so different types of learning disabilities. So as you can see in this circle, there's like OCD, ADHD, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, anxiety, and now we are going to watch a video. It's a very old video, but it still allows viewers today to experience the same frustration a student with learning disabilities may experience in class every day.
Turn to the next page. What color is the first page, Jane? Blue. What does it say in the first page, Carol? The first page, Carol. Earth to Carol, come in, please. The first page. Earth to Carol, come in, please. Raise your hand if you thought that was funny. Yeah, everybody likes that except who? Except Carol. Anytime you as a teacher or a parent decide to use sarcasm with kids, understand that you created a victim. Now that little throwaway line that I threw at Carol, I will forget within 5 minutes, you will forget within 5 minutes, but it's very likely to stay with Carol for the rest of the day. Those little throwaway sarcasms we use. Jody, what color is the print in the first page? What does it say, Lee? Is that what it says, Stephanie? Yes. Turn to the next page. What color is the next page, Lee?
Yellow.
What kind of animal is top of that page, Jody?
Tiger.
That's not a tiger. Carol, what kind of animal is top of that page?
A cat.
It's a cat. Famous story with a catnip, Maria. Famous story with the catnip. Famous story with the catnip, Maria. Famous story with the catnip. Give me one famous story with the catnip, Maria. Okay, does anxiety affect performance? Does anxiety affect performance? Of course it does. According to this, Maria doesn't know one story with a catnip. Give Maria a call.
Okay. So that video just showed like how a student with learning disabilities might act in class and how frustrating it is for them if the teacher does not slow it down. Okay, so now we're going over different types of learning disabilities. So the first one is dyslexia. Research states that 5 in 1 people have this diagnosis. Over 40 million American adults are dyslexic and only 2 million know it. Dyslexia is not tied into an IQ. For example, Einstein was dyslexic and had an estimate IQ of 160. Dyslexia is just not getting letters and numbers mixed up or out of order. Dyslexia is a learning-based disability or disorder that includes poor word reading, word decoding, and oral fluency, such as spelling and reading. In the 1960s, they first discovered this so-called learning disability, and people, obviously now it's called dyslexia, but it was called scrambled symbols. So these are just 4 of the school. This one's in Columbia, and these are 3 in the upstate that just are just for kids who have dyslexia. And so here's just famous people that have struggled with dyslexia in their career. So the next type of learning disability is dysgraphia. Dysgraphia focuses on letters, spelling, and letter spacing. Dysgraphia is a neurological condition that which someone has difficulties turning their thoughts into written languages for their age. The ability dysgraphia can present with many different symptoms at ages. So now here's 2 examples of children writing with dysgraphia. So it's difficulties with writing in a straight line, letter spacing, reversing the letters, and having trouble staying on that line. Okay, dyscalculia. Dyscalculia is a learning disorder that may affect a person's ability to do math. Much like dyslexia disturbs areas of the brain relating to reading, dyscalculia affects the brain its areas to handle math and number-related skills. And here is some. So kids have trouble with filling in the numbers on the number line, and also just counting out as a 1, 2, and 3. So also graphing, estimating time, and counting money, they could also have trouble with. Okay, so now we are going to go into the simulation. Kids and adults with dyslexia are super smart and capable in many ways despite struggles with reading, writing, and spelling. However, dyslexia affects many other language areas such as processing, memory, and attention, to just name a few. If you're not dyslexic, you probably don't realize the daily struggles with language, memory, and organization to impact people with dyslexia. Kids with dyslexia struggle incredibly with forms of falling behind in school and not to their teachers' expectations. So now we are going to start. So now this is the first simulation. So don't read the actual word, read the color of the word. So, ready? Okay. Next one. Pink. Perfect. Okay, so y'all actually did a pretty good job with that. But see, when teachers are flying through the information, it's hard to process what they say. Okay, for the second simulation. So we are going to try to decode the sentences. So the first one will be kind of scrambled up, and then the second one I'll show you the correct way. Okay, does anyone want to try that?
The black cat.
Yes.
Climbed on the tree.
Okay, yep. The black cat climbed up the tree. Okay, so the second one's a little bit more difficult.
God. No, something with a dog, bro.
Okay, yeah, you got it.
Yeah, something with a dog. A she-dog, something.
She played fetch with the dog. Okay, so before I talk about accommodations, I found this quote. It says, fair isn't everybody getting the same thing. Fair is everyone getting what they need in order to succeed. So, for example, if someone couldn't see, wouldn't you give them glasses? Or if they couldn't hear, wouldn't you give them hearing aids? So, just like accommodations are something for a student with learning disabilities to be successful. Some people and I have experienced, oh, it's not fair. Why can you do that? Oh, you just pay money for that for extra time. That's not it. God gave us different gifts for us to live in our lives, and this could outweigh the disadvantage of this diagnosis. Accommodations allow students with disability to persevere with regular course of studies. So here's just different types of accommodations students may use every day. Testing accommodations, taking breaks, preferred seating, extra time for assignments, study skills, sensory tools, outlining, note takers, recording, and environment accommodations. And then my biblical application. Romans 8:28 says, all we know that all things God works for the good in those who love him and who have been called according to his purpose. This verse provides hope and reassurance to individuals with learning disabilities that struggle and immediately lead them something good. It also reminds us that God has planned a purpose for everyone, including with learning disabilities. And that's it. Thank you.
We have several panelists. I want to open it up to you if you have any questions or comments. Feel free to offer those.
Great job. I need you to come speak to our faculty.
Mrs. Mangum actually did that first example. You know,
I did not. She did this all on her own.
you did this past summer where she used a silver screen like that to simulate what it would be like to read that first screen. The simulations were really good.
Thank you.
So, as us for teachers, what is something that you could help us help you? Like, what could we be doing better to be supporting a student in this situation better than maybe
I feel that most of the teachers are educated about it, but I don't think they're educated about it enough. But just like from our perspective, to obviously it's going to be different, but I wish they could just see it in our shoes. So if they could just work on that a little bit.
for sure, right? What's been your biggest struggle, do you think?
Just with
Like the amount of homework, like does it take, I mean, of course, I mean, you're really super successful, so what have you done, or found really helpful to overcome this, and like, do you find that any tips that you could pass on to us to help other students, like, as far as like, does it help to listen to audio, like,
I listen to audios all the time.
audiobooks?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And then just I practice stuff. So if I have to read out loud in a class the next day, I'll go home and read the material. So I just more familiar with all the words.
Just to help yourself be more confident.
Yes, ma'am.
I think those are excellent questions by Dr. Rizika. I think Mrs. Mangum did a really good job with our faculty at the time that she had. It'd be even more effective with a student like Caroline, coming from a student's perspective. You're not going to be here next year, but I'm sure there's somebody as articulate and as successful. I mean, you are a very
Thank
successful
you.
student.
So I got the same question as the answer for the teachers, for the students. Classmates, students who struggle with this type of stuff, what advice do you give them? What would you say as a student, having gone through it? Because a lot of times there are, it's one thing to be a teacher that's sympathetic towards it, that has a student that's vocal and that will communicate well that these are issues that they're working through, right? So from student to student, what would you say? Here's what you need to do.
You have to advocate for yourself. If the teachers don't know or don't understand, then you won't be able to succeed in that class. So I would say advocating and making sure you know your accommodations, you know what you struggle with, so you can be better at whatever the teacher's asking you Yes, I found out in 3rd grade. So I didn't really have to advocate in elementary school, but I went to a dyslexic school, so it was kind of built into the program. But when coming here freshman year, you kind of had to start talking.
So one of the things that I've said to parents often is that knowledge is power, and that the more your student knows about how they learn, what they know about themselves and the ability to be able to share that with their teachers. Would you say that that has been true for you? Is that the more you're able to say, this is how I learn, this is what I need, that has been helped you be successful?
Yes, and I feel like kids are scared to say that they have this, but it's not. Like, I will go up to a teacher and say, hey, I'm dyslexic, I'm going to need some extra help.
It's going to go a long way in the next 4 years in school.
Yes, ma'am.
For you.
In your research, did you come across, how did they discover learning differences, learning disabilities?
Just being, like, actually I didn't, but I just found this how they used to call it scrambled symbols.
One comment, I liked how you defined that quote that you had on fairness.
Mhm.
And when I was working on my doctorate, a professor of mine, I heard her say this all the time. Think about this, and it stuck with me forever. There's nothing so unequal as the equal treatment of unequals.
Mhm.
There's nothing so unequal as the equal treatment of unequals. And it's hard to convince some teachers, I don't think anymore, nowadays it's a little bit easier, people are more knowledgeable. But when I was starting out, I started teaching in 1980, it was just right on the heels of Public Law 94-143, 6. And all the teachers thought, that's cheating, that's unfair, that gives them an advantage. It levels the playing field is what it does. It allows for accommodations that allows you to be successful at your own thing.
Carolyn, you spoke so confidently, and I couldn't help but remember you as a 9th grader in my English class. How do you think you have changed over the last 40 years?
I know myself a lot better. I know what I can and cannot do well. I feel like speaking came a lot easier to me after just practicing a lot.
Yeah, 'cause I can see from a freshman, Caroline, and of course in small group also, but even in classes and seeing you outside of school, outside of class, your confidence has just grown a lot. And I feel like God has given you such a passion for this subject that I can't wait to see how He uses it. Because I think He's going to.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. God's definitely writing your story, and I think you're going to be a fantastic teacher, and I just can't, you're going to be such a blessing to those kids, so.
Thank you.
You're definitely following His path that He has laid out for you, and I'm just really excited for all the kids that get to have Miss Murphy.
Thank you.
Classmates, you got anything for Caroline? Comments, questions? Paul?
We talked before, a lot of people know I have dysgraphia. I've had it since I was little. And when I was coming through elementary, it was a everyday hindrance, people would, like you'd go to it was like, I know one thing is I used to be terrified at the beginning of the year every year because I would go to a teacher and it was always like that conversation was like, all right, how's this year going to go? Am I going to, like my teacher, am I going to be outspoken or am I going to be like hiding at home crying at my mom every night? Like, so I think the fact that you actually touched on that really is a good thing for people to know.
Thank you.
Lance?
What would you say are some things that like fellow students could do better when it comes to like, maybe not like helping, but like communicating and working with fellow students who have dyslexia or different learning disabilities?
Are you talking about like just like knowing like accommodations or something? I
It's
definitely.
like knowing or like honestly just like, like kind of like how like, like is it what things are okay to like do to like kind of like help them or like maybe like, how to communicate that like you understand that like, they learn differently or have a learning disability without kind of coming across as
Mhm.
something like that.
For example, like last year, May would sit next to me in history, and I could never follow a video and also write notes at the same time. So she would give me her notes after class so I could just at least copy something down that I could have. So just being there to help them if they have something like that, if they can't struggle with.
So like, that's a great question, Lane. I think one of the things, and I've shared before, dyslexic, and they didn't do stuff back then. They didn't like diagnose stuff back in the day. And so it was largely just, I didn't do my math. I probably had a couple other things going on too, but you know, who knows at this point. But one thing that I would encourage you, there's been so many of these projects, and Lane, this is on Lane's question. I'm super glad you asked that. I don't know how many times I've said it so far this year. Proximity breeds empathy. If you find an issue in life that you don't care about, it's probably because you don't care about anybody who's going through that particular issue. But the moment you find somebody that you care about that's going through that, immediately their issue becomes your issue, right? And so for those of us that are looking across at someone who is getting accommodations that perhaps we don't get, the tendency is to resent them for that. As opposed to getting to know that person, being sympathetic and even better, empathetic towards their plight in life, and recognize maybe they're dealing with some stuff that you don't have the tools or the resources to even relate to. You know, it's one of those things that going to a Christian school, you would think it would breed in you the ability to see someone going through something and being able to empathize with them. But I'm afraid a lot of times we don't do well at that. We don't do well at seeing somebody say, hey, why do they get that and I don't? Well, because they're going through something that you're not. And that's something that I think relationships, just like raw, natural relationships, help us a lot with. That's what makes a presentation like this so helpful. That's what makes I remember Dr. Sofer, what Dr. Sofer was talking about. Mrs. Mangum brought in all these dyslexia, all these like word tricks and all that stuff. And it's like those of us with dyslexia, we're burning through that stuff. Like, oh yeah, this is old hat. Like this is how I see everything. So like, hey, it works out. And man, you should have seen some of those teachers. They were just, I'm pretty sure a couple of them were in tears because they're starting to recognize this is how my students see things on the regular. But I also echo what Mrs. Mangum said, that knowledge is power. The more you know about your plight in life, the more equipped you are to grow in that. And the more you realize, okay, this is what I've got, this is how I deal with it, this is how and all of a sudden coping becomes growing, right? Like you get these tools and these resources and all of a sudden, okay, I can do this, I can handle this. Sorry.